debate night in the Central Valley. 4 candidates on stage tonight. Vince Fung,
Our state and our nation is in crisis.
Mike Boudreau,
As Congress, we need to say, election laws matter.
Marisa Wood,
I don't believe anything is not attainable.
Andy Morales.
They don't want to tackle the actual issue of immigration.
Sponsored by Barton Marketing Group. Now, it's Central Valley Debate Night.
And good evening to you. We are live tonight, and as you look at the iconic Bakersfield Arch, we welcome you into our studios this hour. I'm Jim Scott with KGET, TV 17 here in Bakersfield, the site for tonight's debate.
And I'm Brian Dorman with CBS 47 News in Fresno. We are most grateful to have you with us tonight. We are your hosts of this debate over this next hour, and it is hard to believe the ballots are already out. We are just 12 days away now from California's primary, quickly approaching now on March 5th. You are watching this debate on air and online on one of 2 Nexstar media stations in Fresno County and Kern County. You can also follow along tonight's debate. We encourage you to do so by using hashtag CA20debate. There you will find additional information supporting tonight's questions.
All right, let's go over the rules. Each candidate will get 60 seconds to answer a question. If there is a follow-up or a rebuttal, the candidate will get 30 seconds and 15 seconds for clarification if need be. We will be reminding our candidates of those time limits throughout the night. When their time is up, the sound of a bell will play. There you have it. The candidates will answer questions tonight in an order determined by our Emerson College poll. First of all, welcome candidates, and thank you for your time this evening. We begin tonight with the crisis at the border. Just this week, Inside California Politics and Emerson College released a poll, and immigration was one of the top issues for voters in the 20th Congressional District. Mr. Fong, my first question is to you, sir. A new bipartisan immigration bill introduced in the House stipulates bringing back the Remain in Mexico provision for asylum seekers, but ties it to funding for military aid for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine. While you support the Israeli funding, you say you are less committed to any further funding for Ukraine. However, does including the Remain in Mexico provision for border security change your mind on this bill? You have 60 seconds, sir.
Well, thank you for the question. No, I do not support the negotiated deal because the American people don't trust big deals in D.C. They want to focus on securing the border, and we have to do that first. That should be our country's #1 issue. I just came back from the border. The Border Patrol just took me on a real-world, real-time situational tour just yesterday, and the chaos on the southern border needs to be addressed. That's why I've been endorsed by President Trump. I've been endorsed by the National Border Patrol Council. That is the council that represents the 18,000 rank-and-file Border Patrol agents that protect our southern border every single day. We have to secure the border first. It's a national security crisis. You look at the cartels that are taking over. You look at human trafficking, fentanyl. This is a real situation that we have to deal with. So we need physical barriers. We need technology. We need to give the Border Patrol flexibility. We need more Border Patrol. We need to end catch and release. Talking to local officials in San Diego, and you see this crisis now across the country. We've got a real situation, and we have to secure the border first before anything else.
Mr. Fong, thank you. Ms. Wood, let me turn to you. Would you support this new proposed bipartisan immigration bill that funds Israel and Ukraine and restarts the Remain in Mexico provision that was actually used in the Trump administration? You have 60 seconds.
In answer, that's a tough question because those are 3 separate, powerful issues. Number 1, the crisis at the border does demand immediate attention, and I believe that we've got to strengthen this existing security at the border so we make sure that criminals do not come in, but also those seeking asylum, also those people that are coming to this country in order to build a better life. We still need to provide access to those in an efficient, safe, and secure way. I do not like it being tied to the funding. I support democracy and freedom all across the country. I support the funding to Ukraine, but as far as supporting the funding to Israel, I do not support funding for Israel, even though they are only democracy in the Middle East. I cannot support a war that is intentionally attacking a group of people in order to retain power.
Ms. Wood, thank you very much. Mr. Morales, let me turn to you. Would you support this new proposed bipartisan immigration bill, again, that funds Israel and Ukraine, but restarts the Remain in Mexico provision that was used in the Trump administration? You have 60 seconds, sir.
Let me just start off by saying the United States is built on immigrants that work and make up a large portion of our construction and agriculture industry. You know, every time I talk to Central Valley voters, I talk to voters and they say that they're waiting years and years waiting for citizenship. Rather than waste the money on, you know, sending aid to other countries, how about we just expand resources to our courts? Because just like every other good American, I don't want criminals coming into my country either. I want to differentiate between the criminals and the folks that are looking to make better lives for themselves and their families back home or seek asylum.
Let me ask you a follow-up question then, Mr. Morales. Directly, can you answer this question? Do you support this bipartisan immigration bill that reinstates the stay in Mexico provision as part of federal immigration policy?
No, I cannot support that.
And do you support any funding for Ukraine or Israel?
No, I do not. Okay. We need to be focusing on ourselves.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Boudreau, we want to hear from you on your position on this new immigration bill, again, which contains the Remain in Mexico provision and funds military aid for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, but also we'd like to hear your view on that. 60 seconds, please.
I would vote no. I do not believe that we should spend one more taxpayer dime going to Ukraine, but I do believe we should support our strongest and most supportive ally in Israel. But combining that into our border is a mistake. That's convoluting the issue, quite frankly. We do need to support Israel. We do not need to support Ukraine with more money. But when it comes to our border, I'm the person on this stage who has real life experiences dealing with the impacts of a failed Biden administration in securing our border. We have an open and unsecured border. We need to secure it with a long wall and a tall wall. But we also have to deal with the people who are here already. Millions of people in this country who have come across the border illegally. We need a secure border. We need to provide ongoing technology as well as increased levels of Border Patrol and Homeland Security personnel on the border.
Mr. Boudreau, a follow-up question, if you will, sir. In 2019, you told the LA Times that you did not have a problem with Obama-era immigration policies and a pathway to citizenship. Is this still your position? You have 30 seconds, sir.
The state of California, with Senate Bill 54, has made it absolutely impossible for local law enforcement to deal with illegal immigrants. It's now illegal for law enforcement to ask somebody in this state if they're an illegal immigrant. I do not support amnesty, but I do believe that with DACA children who are here since they were 18 months of age should have the ability to seek citizenship because they believe they're American citizens. And there should be an available pathway for them in that regard, but not for people coming across the border illegally without the judicial process and legal avenue of entry.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Brian, over to you.
Jim, thank you. Mr. Fong, we're coming to you first for this next question. Former President Donald Trump just came out 2 days ago and endorsed you, Mr. Fong, for Congress. Did this endorsement come with any strings attached? You have 30.
I'm proud and to have President Trump's endorsement. I look forward to working with him when he becomes president and when I'm in Congress. Look, we have serious challenges as a state and a country. Again, the border is the #1 issue. We need to secure the border, and I look forward to working with him to actually take care of that issue finally. I mean, when I was at the border, to see a wall and gaps that existed, and that gap existed because when President Biden took over, he stopped the funding for it.
Mr. Fong, a follow-up to you. Did Kevin McCarthy assist with securing Trump's endorsement? You have 15 seconds.
We were working with trying to get that endorsement from a lot of different people. We're talking to Trump's campaign, but anyone who helped get that endorsement, I appreciate.
Do you know if Kevin McCarthy did help?
I hope so.
Okay. Mr. Fong, thank you. Mr. Boudreau, to you, you have been endorsed by Trump supporters, including California State Senator Shannon Grove.
Yes.
Did you seek the endorsement of Mr. Trump? You have 30 seconds, sir.
I did not seek the endorsement of Mr. Trump. However, I would like to have it as well. But it's very clear that after we received the endorsement of two of the most popular candidates in the Kern County area, who are actually friends of Mr. Fong, who endorsed me, Sheriff Donnie Youngblood and Shannon Grove, Mr. McCarthy pulled a political favor so that he could have the endorsement of Mr. Trump coming into the election. Right after our endorsements is when this came with the endorsement of Mr. Trump.
Mr. Boudreau, I'd like to know, if you didn't seek the endorsement of Mr. Trump, how come? 15 seconds.
Well, quite frankly, as you get into a campaign, you're getting the endorsements of the people who live here. I receive the endorsements of people who have worked with me, know me. I have the California State Sheriff's Association endorsements, all the sheriffs in the state of California, plus key elected officials in District 20 who know me and know how I work. Those people are the ones that I wanted to seek for their endorsement.
Mr. Boudreau, are you still planning on supporting Mr. Trump, voting for him?
Absolutely. I believe Mr. Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. I believe in his policies and what he has done for our country, and I do support President Trump.
Mr. Fong, to you for 15 seconds. Why do you believe this is a political favor?
Well, it's not a political favor. I mean, I'll put my endorsements locally against anybody's. I'm proud to have the endorsement of President Trump. Look forward to working with him. I have the endorsement of Congressman Kevin McCarthy, the endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council, the Fresno District Attorney, the Kern County District Attorney, every single mayor in Kern County, in Clovis. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mr. Fong, thank you, sir. Jim has your next question.
Well, age has become an issue in this presidential election. And starting with you, Ms. Wood, we're going to ask you a direct question tonight. Do you think Joe Biden, who is 81 years old, and Donald Trump, who is 77, are too old to be president? 30 seconds, please. Ms. Wood.
I do not think that age is a precursor to competence. I believe that President Biden is 100% competent in leading this country. He's passed instrumental legislation. We've passed the infrastructure bill. I don't think we need to measure presidents by age or anyone by age. We need to measure them by character first, and their ability to lead and their cognitive processes. And I do not think it should be.
A follow-up to you, Ms. Wood. Do you think there should be an age limit if you're running for president? 15 seconds.
Again, it follows the same thing. I think as long as you are ready and willing to do it. I know even at 63, this is a tough gig, running for office and running this challenge. And I think it more depends on your spirit and your conviction.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wood. Mr. Morales, do you think Joe Biden and Donald Trump are too old to be candidates for president? You have 30 seconds.
Age is just a talking point used by politicians on all ends of the spectrum to determine whether they're fit for office or not. I don't see it like that. I see it as a policy. What policies do you support? I'm a progressive, proud progressive. I support Medicare for all, tuition-free college, and expanding our social safety net programs here in the United States. I don't care about age. I just care about your policies.
And the same follow-up question to you, Mr. Morales. Do you think there should be an age limit for candidates running for president? 15 seconds, sir.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Boudreau, do you think Joe Biden and Donald Trump are too old to be running for president?
I think age is just a number. However, between Donald Trump and President Biden, distinctly different. Your cognitive ability to be able to speak clearly, to function as the commander-in-chief of the United States, you have to be able to be in front of an audience to be able to speak clearly about your messaging. Donald Trump absolutely is able to do so. Biden completely fails in putting together complete sentences and, quite frankly, needs to be removed from office.
Do you think, Mr. Boudreau, there should be age limits for presidential candidates?
Well, I would argue that at some point in time, as long as you're healthy and able to do things intelligently with reason, that age is just a number. However, I would argue 100 is probably too old.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Mr. Fong, do you think Joe Biden and Donald Trump are too old to be running for president?
Well, no. I mean, it's all about competence, right? The voters are going to make the decision. They're going to evaluate the candidates. They're going to evaluate their policies. And in my opinion, and I think it's shared by many people in this district, there is no question that the Central Valley was fundamentally better off under President Trump than under President Biden. And so when we move forward in the campaign, this is why we have campaigns. Both candidates will have to make their case, and I think President Trump is the better candidate.
And as for setting an age limit for presidential candidates, where do you stand, sir?
I don't think we need one. Look, the qualifications in the Constitution.
Mr. Fong, thank you. Brian, over to you.
Candidates, this next question is for all of you, and we will start with you, Mr. Morales. California voters have spoken and have enshrined abortion rights in 2023. There has been a discussion of a 15-week federal ban by Republicans. If asked to vote on a federal ban, what would you do? Mr. Morales, you have 30 seconds, sir.
Reproductive health care is just like any other health care. It is a right. And what we noticed when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade was that it angered voters to register and get out and vote. That whole red wave that was supposed to happen in 2022 turned into nothing but a red trickle when the Republicans got a 4-seat majority at most. Now they only have a 2-seat majority. So running on restricting reproductive health care in the United States is not a very popular issue.
Mr. Morales, a follow-up to you, sir. A recent ruling by Alabama's Supreme Court says frozen embryos are children, and the destruction of those embryos will now be considered a crime. What should be done with frozen embryos if they are no longer wanted? You have 30 seconds.
As of right now, Roe versus Wade was supposed to be the bipartisan solution. So in the first trimester, women have access to reproductive health care. So if embryos are supposed to be in the first or second trimester, they should have access to reproductive health care. That's Roe versus Wade was supposed to be the bipartisan solution, and we should be codifying that into law.
Mr. Morales, just a quick clarification here for 15 seconds. What should be done with frozen embryos if they are no longer wanted? 15 seconds.
Listen, to be honest, medical profession is not my field of study. You know, I study in criminology, law enforcement. All I know is that Roe versus Wade should be codified into law.
Mr. Morales, thank you, sir. Mr. Boudreau, you're up next. If asked to vote on a 15-week federal abortion ban, what would you do? Sir, you have 30 seconds.
We must, in this country, begin to understand that abortion is not the answer for not being accountable. It's not reproductive health at all. I am a pro-life candidate that will support pro-life decisions, and life begins upon conception.
A follow-up question to you, Mr. Boudreau. Alabama's Supreme Court now considers the destruction of frozen embryos as a crime. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley agrees with that ruling. Do you? You have 30 seconds, sir.
You know, I just watched that on the teleprompter outside, and there's not enough information for me to really give a solid answer. But what I will say is that anything involving the destruction of life is not how I would vote.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you, sir. Mr. Fong, same question to you. If asked to vote on a 15-week federal abortion ban, what would you do, sir? You also have 30 seconds.
Well, I'm a strong pro-life legislator. I have an 8-year record of supporting a life. Look, I believe in the sanctity of life. I believe that there needs to be stronger voices for the unborn. Every life has value. So there is a role for the state and for the federal government, and we need to have that discussion and debate.
A follow-up question to you too, Mr. Fong. Alabama's Supreme Court now considers the destruction of frozen embryos as a crime. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley agrees with that ruling. Do you, sir? You have 30 seconds.
Well, I certainly, again, believe in the sanctity of life. The court just ruled, and we're going to have to figure out what those consequences are. I believe that we need to have IVF treatments available for those who want to have families, and this is a difficult decision and difficult for when it comes to families trying to get pregnant and start a family. And so there's going to be a robust debate, and that's a debate that we're going to have not only in Congress.
You, sir. Ms. Wood, if asked to vote on a 15-week federal abortion ban, what would you do? You also have 30 seconds.
I would vote no. As a Catholic, as a woman, and as a mother, I believe it's every woman's right to choose what they do with their body when they start their families. And so I believe that that is, again, the woman's choice. I would not support the 15-week abortion ban. Absolutely not.
And a follow-up question to you, if I may, Ms. Wood. A recent ruling by Alabama Supreme Court says frozen embryos are children, and the destruction of those embryos will now be considered a crime. What should be done with frozen embryos if they are no longer wanted? You have 30 seconds.
I agree with Andy. I like, even though I don't know much about science, I would have them go for science. But what concerns me about this is there are more protections for these embryos than for living children. Look at what happened in the case of Nex Benedict. Where are their protections? This was a child who was beaten to death and really has gotten no protections. So that's the question I ask. Where are those protections?
Ms. Wood, thank you. Jim?
All right, candidates, I want to pivot to fentanyl. The fentanyl epidemic has been widely described as the worst drug crisis in U.S. history. U.S. officials say the pre-made chemical ingredients for this synthetic opioid come from China and Mexico. Starting with you, Mr. Boudreau, would you support sanctions against China and Mexico to stem the tide of fentanyl coming into this country? You have 60 seconds.
Absolutely. We need to hold sanctions against China. We also need to work with the Mexican government, keeping the cartels from coming across an open and unsecure border. I will tell you that me and my agency, as well as many law enforcement agencies throughout the state, are completely frustrated and baffled at the fact that our border is unsecure with deadly fentanyl coming across the border, killing millions of Americans. We must encourage sanctions. We must hold true and be tough to countries who are allowing this type of drug to come into our country, not to exclude methamphetamine, heroin, illegal guns, and humans being brought across that border. But with a specific question to fentanyl, fentanyl is destroying the lives of families and killing people in this country, and we must hold sanctions against China as well as Mexico.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Mr. Fong, same question to you, sir. Would you support sanctions against China and Mexico to stop this fentanyl crisis in our country? You have 60 seconds, sir.
Yes, we got to put sanctions on those countries. We need to increase penalties on those who prey on our children, that use social media to actually to peddle this deadly drug to our kids. Look, we're finding fentanyl in our local schools. Parents are now struggling to talk to their kids about fentanyl. Again, the border is the critical component here. As I talked to the Border Patrol yesterday, fentanyl is being brought over in the southern border, and we have to secure the border first and foremost. That is our country's #1 priority.
Thank you, Mr. Fong. Ms. Wood, the same question to you. Sanctions against China and Mexico to stem the flow of fentanyl into this country. 60 seconds, please.
Absolutely, I support those sanctions, but I think we also have to take a look at the fact that fentanyl is a prescription drug. It is prescribed in many medications, and the frightening thing is it takes such a small amount to become addicted to fentanyl. And so we have to look at within the country with fentanyl that's here, we have to make sure we're having the medical profession aware of how they're prescribing this legally prescribed drug. We also need to be concerned with how it's being gathered illicitly. As I said, the scariest part is its addictiveness, and it strikes, just like the sheriff said, so people from every single walk of life. So we've got to start with the sanctions, absolutely, but we cannot ignore the fact that this is a legally prescribed drug in part, and so we need to look at that as well.
All right, Ms. Wood, thank you. And Mr. Morales, let me turn to you. If elected to Congress, would you support sanctions against China and Mexico to stop the flow of fentanyl coming into our country, sir? You have 60 seconds.
Let me start off by saying I cannot think of a more uniting issue than this one. I see this as a great opportunity for us to rebuild our infrastructure, creating millions of good-paying jobs, protecting our natural resources, and the infrastructure that we do build going forward will be green and safe for our environment via a Green New Deal. Now, as we know, drugs come through legal ports of entry. This includes vehicles, this includes airlines, this includes shipping containers. And rebuilding our infrastructure, making sure that our law enforcement has the resources that they need, building our infrastructure is of essence. That's how we stop fentanyl and other drugs coming into the United States.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morales.
All right, we've already covered a lot of ground here tonight. We have much more to come, including important topics that will directly impact you and your family here in the Central Valley. We're back in just 2 minutes.
And welcome back. You are watching our live debate tonight on the 20th Congressional District here in California. I'm Jim Scott with KGET TV 17 in Bakersfield.
And I'm Brian Dorman with CBS 47 News in Fresno. We want to jump right back into things here. We want to turn now to the conflict in the Middle East. Mr. Fong, we will come to you first. You say you support Israel and its right to defend itself. Israel has given a March 10th deadline to Hamas to return the hostages or their forces will move into Rafah. Do you, sir, believe that Israel should go into Rafah? You have 60 seconds.
Well, Israel has definitely the right to defend itself. What happened in October is horrific. We need to destroy Hamas, and we need to support Israel with military aid to get that job done. What's happening in Israel is not unique to Israel. We look at what's happening with Hezbollah now getting involved in Iran. There's chaos throughout the Middle East, but we need to support our democratic ally, and we need to ensure that Israel can protect their interests, but also protect the security of their citizens and security of the Middle East.
Just to clarify, 15 seconds to you, Mr. Fong. Do you believe that Israel should go into Rafah? Yes or no?
We should not be micromanaging the security of Israel, but if they need to, absolutely.
Mr. Fong, thank you, sir. Ms. Wood, we would like to ask you a little bit of a different question about the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Should the first step in a ceasefire be the return of hostages by Hamas? You have 60 seconds.
Number one, I stand to defend democracy all across the world. Whenever one of our allies is threatened, then we are all threatened. And while Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, this conflict transcends democracy. This is about humanity. The war in Gaza is a determined attack on a group of people just to retain power. I do not believe that civilians, innocent children, are an accepted casualty of war. So I do not think that, I believe that there should be a ceasefire, and that I will not support any funding, anything else other than a complete ceasefire and the end of the murdering of innocent civilians.
And just to clarify, to make sure that our viewers understand, Ms. Wood, should the first step in any ceasefire be the return of hostages by Hamas? 15 seconds.
I think all hostages need to be returned, but a ceasefire has got to start. That's the bottom line. They have to stop.
Ms. Wood, thank you. Mr. Morales, to you. We're going to ask you about a social media post that you liked that reads in part, collective punishment is a war crime, so are blocked food and water, referring to the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Do you believe, sir, that Hamas committed war crimes on October 7th? You have 60 seconds.
Let me just start off by saying we should not be spending another dime in aiding Israel in their genocide in Gaza. You know, medical bankruptcy is a top cause of bankruptcy here in the United States. We have over 45,000 Americans who die every single year because they don't have access to basic health care. And millions of Americans are putting off going to a doctor because they can't afford their co-payments or deductibles. Over half this country is living paycheck to paycheck. So no, I do not support Israel's genocide in Gaza, because that's what it is. What do you call a country bombing schools, bombing mosques, and almost half the casualty rate is children? You call it what it is. There's one word for that, and it's genocide.
Mr. Morales, the question to you is, do you believe that Hamas committed war crimes on October 7th? You have 15 seconds.
Yes, I do. What Hamas did to Israel was wrong. They bombed innocent civilians, because that's what it's about. It's about innocent civilians. So yes, they did.
Mr. Morales, thank you, sir. Mr. Boudreau, sticking with the unrest in the Middle East, you have said, sir, that we should use our military to the full extent in supporting Israel. What does to the full extent mean? Does that mean boots on the ground? You have 60 seconds, sir.
Well, I have to tell you that if it was my family that was taken hostage, murdered, and killed by a terrorist organization, I would hope that my allies would come to my aid. Israel is the only country surrounded completely by 22 other countries who hate them. They try to live peacefully there. They work hand in hand with the American government and have been a proven ally to us, the United States. We must support Israel, one, financially if need be, and if they begin to get overtaken and need our military, then yes, our military would need to help Israel.
With boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Boudreau. Jim?
Thank you, Brian. Homelessness has widely been described as the top social issue here in California. Ms. Wood, I'm going to come to you first. Recent data from Kern County shows a 22% increase in homelessness last year. You have said that homeless foster youth need to be provided affordable housing. What is your plan, if elected, to make this happen when the federal government is already $33 trillion in debt? Ms. Wood, you have 60 seconds.
Number one, I believe the homeless issue, we've got to start looking at the causes. What is putting these people on the streets? And one of the causes is youth that age out of the foster care system. Already, the Housing Authority has put together a shelter for these the folks. It's called Cornerstone. And what they did was they repurposed a church, and now they're sheltering the youth that have aged out of the foster care system. They are then not only given shelter, but they're given support. They're giving job training, the opportunity to get their GED. And when you're referring to the budget and why we have this $1 trillion debt, a budget is all about priorities. My priority in a budget will always be to fund programs that help people here. We need to help these folks get off the ground, and that is exactly where my priorities lie. My priorities lie with budgeting that helps support the working people.
Ms. Wood, thank you. Mr. Morales, let me turn to you, sir. On the topic of homelessness, you have said that there needs to be an easier way to build affordable housing. How would you, if elected, pay for that? 60 seconds, sir.
Well, first of all, we must look into why people can't afford a home in the first place. Like I said, medical bankruptcy is a top cause of bankruptcy in the United States. We have over half this country living paycheck to paycheck, and 45,000 Americans are dying every single year because they don't have access to basic health care. College is becoming more and more unaffordable, and people are going into debt because of it. Does that sound like an economy where someone my age can actually afford a home? No, it does not. That's why I support Medicare for all, and it's going to include dental, vision, and mental health. I support tuition-free college because you shouldn't be going into debt studying an occupation that you're passionate about. For me, it's criminal justice, and people shouldn't be going bankrupt for medical bills.
If I could, let me just follow up. Do you have any specific approaches to funding affordable housing for the homeless, sir? 30 seconds.
Yeah, so what we know is that these large profitable corporations like Amazon, AT&T, Facebook, and other corporations pay next to nothing in federal taxes, and sometimes they get net subsidies at the tail end of it. These corporations don't need our support. People need our support. So making them pay their fair share in taxes and making sure that they don't skirt the tax system is how we're going to pay for it.
Mr. Morales, thank you. Mr. Boudreau, let me turn to you, sir. Again, sticking with the homeless crisis, encampments here in Bakersfield have been cleared out, and the people living in those encampments are back on site where they were in less than 12 hours. Your solution is mental health programs for the homeless. But what can we do right now about these encampments, sir? 60 seconds, please.
Well, first, you're going to have to identify the core problem. One of the core problems of the increase in homelessness and mental health crisis in this country was Proposition 47 in California when it was passed. In times past, law enforcement could engage with people and remove them from areas that were considered illegal to post camps. They could get them to social services and rehabilitation centers, as well as provide services in a custodial environment if in fact they were had a drug addictive behavior. What we did was remove the ability for law enforcement engagement for them to be removed from that environment. The third court argued that any place of public that anyone that can access publicly, that they can throw a camp up and live. And so we're going to have to revisit the core issues of the problems that have generated the increase in homelessness. You can go back to the passing of Proposition 47, track the data, and you will find that that is one of the core issues that needs to be revisited.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Let me turn to you, Mr. Fong. In Sacramento, a couple of years ago, you asked for $750 million for affordable housing and expanded access to health care and substance abuse treatment for our homeless population, but that bill died in committee. Over the last 4 years, California has spent more than $20 billion on the homeless crisis. The problem, though, by most accounts, is worse now than it ever has been. How do you fix it? 60 seconds, sir.
Well, certainly we need to invest in drug addiction and mental health services. That is critical. We need to empower cities and counties to end encampments. It is inhumane to allow individuals to die on the street. But the problem in Sacramento is that they define success based on how much is spent. And as you mentioned before, over $22 billion has been spent on homelessness. We need to audit all of those programs and ensure that those programs are effective. If the programs aren't working, then let's stop funding them and make sure that the programs, that funding goes to programs that work. But we have to deal with homelessness head on. There are a lot of broken systems. The foster care system has been mentioned. And so we need to ensure that all of those broken systems that are creating individuals that are now more susceptible to homelessness, I mean, we have to give them the services that they need, and some of it may be housing. But providing housing without any wraparound services, without drug addiction services or mental health services, we have to deal with the core issues of what's causing homelessness in the first place.
All right, and a follow-up question for you, Mr. Fong, if you will. Space is limited in our shelters. Should the homeless be allowed to live in these encampments while they wait for a permanent solution? 30 seconds, please.
As I said before, we need to empower cities and counties to end encampments. We cannot allow individuals, our friends and neighbors, to die on the street. That's inhumane. That's why we're trying to create the care court, so that if someone is a harm to themselves or to the public, that there is now a court-mandated path into services. Now, the state, unfortunately, is setting up a system to fail because they're not putting the correct resources into it. But we have the ability to solve this problem, but we have to make sure the programs work.
Mr. Fong, thank you. Brian has the next question.
Jim, thank you. I'd like to focus now on crime. Our Inside California Politics Emerson College poll shows nearly 40% of voters say they or someone in their family has been the victim of a property crime in the last year. Mr. Morales, we're going to come to you first to answer this question from a small business owner in Fresno. Listen.
Hi, my name's Brianna Sullivan, and I am a small business owner here in Fresno. And my restaurant has been broken into about 6 times in less than 6 months. And it's costed several $100s a month in added surveillance and repairs. And my question is, how will you help small business owners tackle the surge in burglaries and thefts?
And Mr. Morales, that is the question to you tonight. What will you do to help small business owners like Brianna tackle the surge in retail theft? You have 60 seconds, sir.
Well, like I said, I studied in criminology, law enforcement, and currently work asset protection in retail as well. And part of the curriculum to get your bachelor's in criminology, you must learn the factors that contribute to why people might commit crime in the first place. And all these issues are unaddressed. We're talking about poverty, mental health, and I'm blanking on the other one, but poverty and mental health and drug abuse. All of these issues are unaddressed. That's why I support Medicare for all, and it's going to include dental, vision, and mental health. The truth is, these people need to get back on their feet and become contributing members to society once again. So that's why I support, expanding resources to mental health services and drug rehabilitation services as well. Go into debt for getting into an occupation that you are most passionate about. Like I said, for me, it's criminal justice. And as for business owners, listen, I have no issue using tax dollars to subsidize small businesses. What I do have an issue is using tax dollars to subsidize large corporations that don't need it.
Mr. Morales, thank you. Mr. Boudreau, same question to you, sir. What would you do to help small business owners like Brianna tackle the surge in retail theft? You have 60 seconds.
Well, first off, we need to start holding criminals accountable. People who are vandalizing, stealing, acting like thugs in the middle of the street, running into Target and stealing things, smashing windows. Even one here most recently, I met with a business owner in Bakersfield. He's had his window smashed multiple times over. And law enforcement hands are tied. Sacramento has failed us. Our legislators have failed us. We need to hold criminals accountable. When they commit a criminal act, misdemeanor, infraction, they must be held accountable. Proposition 47 needs to be revisited. It needs to be reversed, amended, and we need to start holding criminals accountable. When you start holding criminals accountable, and they have to go through the judicial process, of course you can look into rehabilitation later. But when you're committing crimes, that's what law enforcement's for. And we must make sure that people understand that if you act criminally, you will be held to justice.
Mr. Boudreau, I have a follow-up question for you, sir. Do you believe that CHP officers should be deployed to the Central Valley? We've seen that, of course, recently in Oakland to crack down on retail theft You have 30 seconds.
Well, I think that any law enforcement resource that we can use to help our small business owners and big business owners alike, as well as provide safety to our children on the streets where people can go to parks and churches and feel safe, of course, use the resources that need be. The issue is that the California Highway Patrol does not have the resources to do what local law enforcement can and will do if they're given the authority, if they're given the ability, and if we hold criminals accountable. You will see a dramatic reduction in criminal activity such as this.
Mr. Boudreau, have progressive policies gone too far? 15 seconds.
Way too far. We in California, as well as in the United States, we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe, and it's time that we take our country back. How do we take our country back? You hold people that are abusing it accountable.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Mr. Fong, to you. What will you do, sir, to help small business owners tackle retail theft? You have 60 seconds.
Well, there's no doubt that soft on crime policies have made things worse. Gavin Newsom has led the charge on that. There's actually a very important initiative that's being circulated right now. I want to applaud the Fresno District Attorney, Lisa Smitkamp, and the Kern County District Attorney, Cindy Zimmer. They are trying to qualify an initiative to change Prop 47. It would bring back accountability, it would bring back consequences. They're leading the charge. I've supported this initiative financially. I'm supporting it by encouraging people to sign the petition. If this petition qualifies and goes to the November ballot, everyone will have a chance to send a message, not only to Sacramento, but across the country, that enough is enough. Let's change Prop 47, let's increase penalties on criminal behavior, and let's hold criminals accountable.
Mr. Fong, a follow-up question to you. The governor recently deployed CHP officers to Oakland to crack down on crime. Do you want to see that same thing happen in Bakersfield and Fresno? You have 30 seconds.
As someone who has worked with the CHP in Sacramento, they're doing a tremendous job. And of course, we would ask for resources in the Central Valley, but we need to create that partnership. We need to support our local law enforcement as well as CHP. But again, when the CHP catches, or when our law enforcement catches individuals, the district attorneys need the tools to prosecute. And so that's what we need to do. We need to empower our district attorneys to actually hold these criminals accountable and put them in jail.
And Mr. Fong, 15 seconds. Have progressive policies gone too far?
Absolutely, no doubt. I've been in the legislature for 8 years. I've fought against these out-of-touch liberal policies that we've warned. We have warned the governor, we warned Governor Newsom that if these progressive policies continued, the crime would get worse. And now we're seeing crime rates across the board increasing. Violent crime, property crime, cargo theft. We need to stop these progressive policies.
Mr. Fong, thank you. Ms. Wood, to you. What will you do to help small business owners like Brianna tackle the surge in retail theft? You have 60 seconds.
We have to acknowledge the connection between high levels of poverty and crime. Without acknowledging that, all the accountability pieces mean nothing, because if you have a parent who is desperately trying to feed their family, whether they have 10 years in prison or 20 years in prison isn't going to matter, because they still have to feed their family. So absolutely, we need strong accountability pieces, strong sentencing for crime, but it has to go hand in hand with recognizing and changing the patterns that brought us to that crime. Our own Bakersfield Police Department did just that when they forged strategic community partnerships to look at and identify where the crime was being taken, where it was happening most, so that way we could address prevention programs, assess extra police force to be patrolling at that time. It has to be a complete package. Just standalone accountability pieces and punishment is not enough. We have to recognize the initial part of the crime.
Ms. Wood, a follow-up question to you for 15 seconds. Is Mr. Boudreau right that people don't feel safe?
I believe that's true. I know a lot of people don't feel safe, but that's something that we have to put through together. Again, what just happened with the Bakersfield Police Department, they were able to reduce the incidence of gun violence just because of that community partnership. It takes all of it, and we can make our community safe.
Ms. Wood, thank you. Mr. Morales, same question to you. Is Mr. Boudreau right that people don't feel safe? 15 seconds, sir.
He is right. However, we must also recognize that in the Scandinavian countries, they have less recidivism than what we have here in the United States. And that's because they have a stronger social safety net programs in their countries that we don't have here. And that includes Medicare for all, which is a single-payer healthcare system. They have tuition-free college, and they pay you to go to college.
Mr. Morales, thank you, sir. We all know how important water is to the Central Valley. Jim has your next question.
Right, candidates, right now, California environmental policies send trillions of gallons of water to the ocean through the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta to protect endangered fish species. Because of environmental pumping restrictions on the Delta, Valley farmers historically have received about 30% of the water they're entitled to. Mr. Boudreau, I want to start with you. As a member of Congress, what would you do to provide our farmers here in the Valley with the water they say they're entitled to?
Well, and I believe they are entitled to it. And quite frankly, I believe that our farmers shouldn't be charged one dime for water. I think that we have enough smart people in this state that we can come up with innovative ideas such as hydroelectric reservoirs, desalination plants, as well as restoring our aquifers with technology and advancements that we can. The issue that I have is that we have environmentalists who are pushing back against what is an issue of national security. We must be able to feed our soldiers. We must be able to feed America. And if we don't support our farmers, then quite frankly, we're in a position where our national security is in jeopardy. I would work with Congress. I would remove the red tape when it comes to the environmental pushbacks, and I would make sure that we would be working on grants that would help support new innovative technologies, not just a dam, but hydroelectric reservoir, desalination plants, nuclear power plants that would help support the energy required for the desalination plants. We have the technology, we have the innovation, and the ability to do so. We just need to work together and make it happen for our farmers.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Mr. Fong, same question to you. What would you do if elected to Congress to help provide our farmers here in the Central Valley with the water they believe they are entitled to? 60 seconds, please.
Well, I'm the only legislator on this stage, and I've been fighting for water for the past 8 years in Sacramento. The allocation actually is 15% that has been allocated, and our farmers are paying 100% for 15% of the water. That's not fair. We need to move the water when we get it. We got to increase the pumping when we have it. Align the scheduling between the State Water Project and the Central Valley Water Project. We need to build more water infrastructure. The Sites Reservoir, Temperance Flat. We have the Seabourn Reservoir outside of Tulare that can hold this excess water when we need it. That's why when I've been working with the Interior Secretary under President Trump, David Bernhardt, who has endorsed me, when 4 years ago, President Trump was here in Bakersfield, signed new biological opinions, new science data that will allow more water to flow to the Central Valley through the Central Valley Project. And now we need to ensure that we have someone that understands the nexus between the state policies and federal policies to ensure that water flows when we have the water and that we actually have the projects to store it.
Mr. Fong, thank you. Now to you, Ms. Wood. How would you provide farmers here in the Central Valley with the water they say they're entitled to if elected to Congress? 60 seconds, please.
Well, I have been married to a farmer, someone who's been in ag for 38 years, so I understand the frustration that he's experienced. Water is a shared resource, and we have to prioritize water to the agricultural community as well as water to our So again, just as my fellow candidates have mentioned, we have to be innovative. We have to be creative in terms of getting the water here to where it needs to be to the I believe we need to come together, working with the environmentalists, but there is no reason to be sending our water away when our farmers who feed the world need this water. So again, it's building up those aquifers. We have a water scarcity issue at this time, and we have got to make sure that this shared resource gets to those people who need it the most. And it's going to take that creative, innovative thinking, and we've also got to stand up for ourselves in both Washington and in Sacramento.
Ms. Wood, thank you. Mr. Morales, same question to you. What would you do if elected to get more water to farmers here in the Central Valley?
I cannot think of a better way to help out our farmers than to rebuild their infrastructure, creating millions of good-paying jobs, protecting our natural resources, and the infrastructure that we do build going forward will be green and safe for our environment via a Green New Deal. Now, if we all remember correctly, we had a trade war with China, and at the tail end of it, we had to bail out our farmers to the tune of billions and billions of tax dollars. Rather than putting our farmers in unnecessary harm's way, how about we just give them the resources that they need to put food on my plate, your plate, and America's plate?
Mr. Morales, thank you. Brian?
Let's turn now to a topic that has lots of people talking across the state of California, and that is high-speed rail. Its price tag is now a whopping $128 billion. Mr. Fong, we are going to start with you on this question. Do you support any additional federal funding for California's high-speed rail project? And if so, sir, by how much? You have 30 seconds.
This project needs to stop. $128 billion. This project was proposed at the very beginning to cost less than $30 billion. And this project has been mismanaged. It's wasteful, and we have better uses of that money. The state of California, in the budget every single year, spends about $1 to $4 billion throwing money at this project that is failing. It's failing. And I would argue that if I went to every single Californian and said, how best to spend $1 to $4 billion, they have other priorities.
Mr. Fong, thank you, sir. Ms. Wood, over to you. Do you support any additional federal funding for the high-speed rail project? And if so, by how much? You also have 30 seconds.
I do support the extra funding for the high-speed rail project. I believe we need to finish what we started, but we have to take into account where it has been mismanaged. We need to make sure that people are spending the money appropriately. This can be a powerful, powerful source for this, for our state, and I cannot see just throwing away all of the work that's already in there already. So we would need to absolutely have extra funding. I would not like to see it be as high as $1 billion, but whatever we need to make sure it's accounted for and properly funded.
Ms. Wood, thank you. Mr. Morales, do you support, sir, additional federal funding for the high-speed rail project? And if so, by how much? You have 30 seconds.
Yes, I do. And what screams out to me is jobs. You know, I'm big on jobs. What better way to create jobs than a high-speed rail and make a commute from I believe it's from San Francisco to Los Angeles more easy. Don't quote me on that. But what screams to me is jobs, and however much it takes, but with oversight and with the right amount, we got to finish this project.
Mr. Morales, thank you, sir. Mr. Boudreau, do you support, sir, additional federal funding for the high-speed rail project? If so, by how much? You have 30 seconds.
I do not. It's a train that goes nowhere. We see it trying to be built all up and down the state. It's in little chunks and pieces, and there's no end in sight, with more money being allocated when we have a crisis in this country, when we have a crisis in this state. We have a mental health crisis. We have a homeless crisis. We have an open border and drug crisis. We have guns and drugs flowing across an open border. We have a drug addictive behavior crisis in this country. Money should be going to help Americans and helping California, not for an endless project that seems to go nowhere.
Mr. Boudreau, thank you, sir. Listen, we have covered some very serious issues here tonight. We want to get to know you just a little bit better. We're looking for just one-word answers from each of you. We'll start with you, Mr. Morales. What is your favorite movie?
That's a good question. Probably Over the Hedge.
Mr. Boudreau.
Tombstone.
Mr. Fong.
The Godfather.
Ms. Wood.
That's Gone with the Wind.
All right. The questions just get harder from here. What is your favorite comfort food, Mr. Morales?
Beef chow mein from Ichiban out of Fresno County.
Mr. Boudreau.
Pizza.
Mr. Fong.
A cheeseburger and fries.
Ms. Wood.
Pasta.
One more question for you tonight. Final question. What is your favorite vacation spot, Mr. Morales?
What I want to go to is Germany.
Mr. Boudreau.
I like being on the coast.
Mr. Fong.
Like going to the beach.
Ms. Wood.
New Orleans.
All right, candidates, very good. It is time now for closing statements. You will each have 30 seconds. Mr. Morales, let's start with you. Your closing statement, please, 30 seconds.
Americans are absolutely struggling right now. We're living paycheck to paycheck. Medical bills, we're going bankrupt from them. And people my age are going to college and we're getting into debt. This economy is not serving us whatsoever. Around my age, I'm probably not going to be able to afford a home as well as my generation, despite all of us working very hard. So it's about time that we uplift our social safety net programs here in the United States to fit all of us. No more going bankrupt from medical bills and no more student loan debt.
Mr. Morales, thank you. Ms. Wood, closing statement, 30 seconds, please.
I hope this debate afforded you the opportunity to get to know me and get to know where I stand on the issues, because the Marisa you see here tonight is the Marisa that will fight for you in Congress. I hope I can earn your vote and your trust, and I can promise you that every single day I go to work in Congress, I will ask of myself, what will I do today to make the lives better for the folks that trust in me with their vote? Thank you.
Ms. Wood, thank you. Mr. Boudreau, closing statement, 30 seconds, please.
America is in a crisis. These are tough times. You need a tough, tested person with tenacity that has true life experiences. I have 37 years in law enforcement where I've been in the trenches. I've seen firsthand human traffickers, people coming across the borders committing crimes. I have a friend whose brother was shot and killed by an illegal immigrant. I've been to the funerals of law enforcement officers, been to the funerals of victims, and it's time you have someone with real life experiences that's tough, that's not pushed around, that will push back, and at the end of the day, the voters need to ask themselves, who do they want representing their district in Congress? It's me. I believe I'm the tough candidate, and I will push and fight for the people of this district.
And finally, Mr. Fong, closing statement, 30 seconds, please.
Well, I want to thank my wife, who's here, for her love and support. I want to thank the voters for tuning in. Look, I've watched the state and the country change before our very eyes, and I'm not going to sit back and do nothing. I've spent the last 8 years fighting for the Central Valley in Sacramento, and I'm going to take that fight to Washington, D.C. We need to secure the border. We need to get our fiscal house in order. We need to defend our water and energy resources. And so that's why I've been endorsed by President Trump. I've been endorsed by Congressman Kevin McCarthy, by the district attorneys in Fresno and Kern County, from leaders across our community. I've been endorsed by the National Border Patrol Council. And so when you look at someone who's the most qualified, who's going to be the proven conservative in this race, that's me. And I would be honored to have your vote.
All right, candidates, very good. Of course, our express intent in holding this debate tonight is to help you at home, the voters, make an informed decision at the polls. So we want to thank you for watching. Your vote matters, and primary election day is March 5th.
And a big thank you tonight for the candidates taking part in this debate here tonight in the Central Valley. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching at home.
This has been the 20th Congressional District Debate, sponsored by Barton Marketing Group, voted Best Full Service Advertising and Marketing Agency.